Emory stepped into the clinic, a familiar scent of antiseptic and herbs lingering in the air. It had been his second home for years, a place where he had poured his heart and soul into healing others. But today, he wasn't here to heal, he was here to say goodbye. His fellow doctors were already waiting, some with their arms crossed, others fidgeting with their lab coats. The moment they saw him, their expressions shifted from casual to solemn. "Is this really it, Emory?" Dr. Lin, one of his mentors, asked, pushing up his glasses. "You're actually leaving?" Emory exhaled softly, offering a small smile. "Yes. My residency is over. I'm free to go now." "But where exactly are you going?" one of the younger doctors, Mira, piped up. "You're not really going through with the whole monk thing, are you?" A few nurses standing nearby exchanged glances, murmuring among themselves. Everyone had heard the news by now. It sounded absurd, even impossible to most of them. Emory hesitated, unsure how to answer. He had expected resistance, but seeing the concern in their eyes made it harder. I don't know if I'll ever come back," he admitted finally. "I want this. I need to be somewhere quiet, away from everything, away from..." He stopped himself, shaking his head. "I just need to heal." "But do you really think isolating yourself is the answer?" Dr. Lin frowned, looking unconvinced. "You're a doctor, Emory. You know better than anyone that wounds don't just disappear because you run away from them." He swallowed, knowing there was truth in those words, but he had already made up his mind. "Maybe not," he said softly. "But I need to try." Before anyone else could argue, a small voice called out from the hallway. "Dr. Emory." A little girl, no older than 7, ran up to him, her tiny hands clutching the edge of his coat. It was Lily, one of his longtime patients. Her mother followed closely behind, giving Emory a sad smile. "You're leaving?" Lily's big, round eyes shimmered with confusion. "But, you said you'd still be here when I got better." Emory felt his throat tighten. He crouched down, gently holding her hands in his. "Lily, you are getting better," he said, forcing a smile. "You're strong, and you have the best doctors in the world taking care of you. But they're not you," she sniffled. Emory closed his eyes briefly, pushing back the emotions threatening to surface. "I'll always be cheering for you, even if I'm far away," he promised. "And I know you'll grow up to be a wonderful, strong girl." Lily hesitated before wrapping her arms around his neck in a tight hug. "Don't forget us," she mumbled. His fingers curled into the back of her dress as he whispered, "I never could." When he finally stood, the weight of everyone's stares pressed against him. They wanted him to stay, but none of them tried to stop him. "Take care of yourself, Emory," Dr. Lin said at last, his voice softer than before. Emory nodded, offering one last lingering glance at the people he had worked beside, the patients he had cared for. And then, with a deep breath, he turned and walked away, toward an uncertain future, but one he was willing to embrace. Hale let out a long breath as the director called, "That's a wrap." The set instantly buzzed with energy, crew members packing up, actors laughing, and assistants running around to finalize last-minute details. Hale, still dressed in his costume, ran a hand through his styled hair, flashing a grin as a few of his co-stars gathered around him, showering him with compliments. "You were amazing, Hale. Seriously, that last scene. You owned it. You always make it look so effortless." Hale accepted their words with ease, charming as ever. A few of them handed him small gifts, fancy chocolates, a designer scarf, a handwritten note tucked into a sleek envelope. He took them all with a smirk and a casual, "You're spoiling me." He had no qualms about being adored, and he certainly had no problem flirting right back. From a distance, Julian leaned against a railing, watching it all unfold. Beside him, Nicky crossed his arms. "He's really something else, isn't he?" Nicky murmured, shaking his head in mild amusement. Julian let out a low chuckle. "He's a menace," he muttered under his breath, but there was no irritation in his voice, just intrigue. They continued to watch as Hale gracefully excused himself from his admirers and made his way toward a nearby bar, slipping inside without a second glance. Nikki glanced at Julian. "I've got something to take care of. You coming?" Julian shook his head. "Go on ahead. I'll catch up." Nikki gave him a knowing smirk but said nothing before disappearing into the city streets. Julian followed after Hale, keeping a slow pace as he entered the dimly lit bar. The place wasn't crowded, just a few scattered patrons nursing their drinks. Hale had already claimed a seat at the bar, his posture relaxed, one hand loosely resting on his glass as he sipped his drink. For a while, Julian simply observed. Hale was good at pretending he didn't notice him, but Julian caught the briefest flicker of awareness in his eyes. And then it happened. Hale looked up, locking eyes with him across the room. It was intense. The kind of eye contact that made the air feel heavy, thick with something unspoken. Julian tilted his head slightly, a smirk playing on his lips, waiting to see if Hale would acknowledge him. But Hale, as sleek and calculated as ever, merely looked away, feigning indifference, swirling the amber liquid in his glass as if Julian wasn't even there. Julian took that as his cue. With slow, measured steps, he made his way over, sliding into the seat beside him. "Drinking alone? That doesn't seem like your style." Hale didn't glance at him, simply taking another sip of his drink. "I like the peace." Julian chuckled, resting his elbow on the bar, angling himself toward Hale. "Oh. And yet you attract attention like it's second nature. It must be exhausting." This time, Hale allowed himself a smirk but still didn't look at him. "I manage." Julian leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You know, I've seen you handle a lot of admirers today. But I have to wonder, does anyone ever shake you up?" Hale finally turned to look at him, his expression unreadable. "You think you can?" Julian's smirk widened. "I don't think. I know." Hale raised a brow but remained perfectly composed. "Interesting." Julian signaled to the bartender. "Another for him." "On me." Hale let out a soft chuckle. "Trying to impress me?" "Trying to get you to talk," Julian corrected smoothly. "I'd like to know more about you." Hale leaned back, studying him. "Why don't you tell me something first?" Julian didn't miss the slight shift in his demeanor, curiosity piqued, but still wary. He decided to play along. Julian Hunt. A partial truth. I'm a fisherman from Brighton." Hale let out a short laugh. "You? A fisherman?" He let his gaze roam over Julian, taking in his well-tailored coat, his smooth confidence, the way he carried himself like he was used to getting what he wanted. "Forgive me if I don't believe that." Julian feigned offense. "Why not?" Hale rested his chin on his palm, smirking. "Because I've met wealthy men before. You wear the same confidence they do. Fishermen don't usually look so," he trailed off, deliberately letting the sentence hang. Julian grinned. "So what?" Hale tilted his head. "Expensive." Julian leaned in closer, his voice dipping lower. "Don't let appearances fool you. I carry myself this way because I don't want to be looked down on." Hale regarded him for a moment, then smirked. "Now that I can believe." Julian watched as Hale took another sip of his drink, his fingers tapping idly against the glass. "So," Julian continued, his tone casual, "since you don't believe I'm a fisherman, what about you? Where are you from?" Hale shrugged, his smirk turning playful. "Brighton, actually. And I'll be returning there soon with my family." Julian's expression didn't falter, but inside, a flicker of amusement sparked. Fate really had a strange way of working. "Is that so?" he mused. "Then maybe we'll run into each other." Hale chuckled softly. Maybe. Julian rested his chin on his hand, eyes fixed on Hale. I could take you out on my boat. Show you the sea. Hale merely smiled, swirling his drink. We'll see. Julian knew that answer wasn't a no. And that was enough for now. The Grand Monk Cathedral was quiet, bathed in soft golden light as Emory stepped inside. The scent of aged wood and incense filled the air, and the faint echoes of chanting monks drifted from the halls beyond. It was peaceful, exactly what he needed. The head monk, an elderly man with wise eyes and a serene expression, greeted him with a gentle nod. You seek a life of devotion? Emory bowed slightly. Yes. I want to become a monk. The monk studied him for a long moment, as if searching for something beyond his words. Then he spoke, his voice calm but firm. To walk this path, you must truly be ready to shed all earthly desires. Are you prepared for that? Emory didn't hesitate. I am. The head monk nodded approvingly. Then return in 2 days. You will begin your journey as a disciple, undergoing prayer, trials, and reflection. Only then will you be sent to your place of assignment. Emory accepted the conditions without argument. I understand. As he stepped out of the cathedral, the weight in his chest felt slightly lighter. Maybe this was the right path. Maybe this was how he would finally find peace. But that feeling didn't last long. When he arrived home, he immediately spotted Hale stepping out of a taxi, alongside Julian. His stomach twisted in irritation. Hale was laughing at something Julian had said, and Julian, ever the charmer, leaned in slightly as if sharing a secret. Their body language was unmistakable, flirtatious, playful, charged with something Emory didn't want to acknowledge. Julian turned to leave, walking toward the gate, when his gaze landed on Emory. For a moment, their eyes locked. Then Julian smirked, and winked. Emory felt his breath hitch as he quickly recognized him as the stranger from before, an unexpected reaction that only added to his frustration. He clenched his jaw as Julian sauntered away, completely unbothered. Shaking off the feeling, Emory turned his attention to Hale, who had barely noticed the exchange. He followed him inside, catching up just as Hale was about to head to his room. Who is he to you? Emory asked, keeping his tone neutral. Hale turned, raising an eyebrow. Who? The man I just saw you with, Emory clarified. Hale scoffed lightly. Just another admirer. He smirked. Not in my league, but fun enough to play with. Emory narrowed his eyes. That sounded exactly like something Hale would say. Emory threw the next question at him. And what about Ethan? His tone had an edge now, the teasing moment gone. Hale tensed. What about him? Emory crossed his arms. You're out here, flirting with other men, making plans to have fun, but Ethan is still waiting for you. What are you planning to do with him? Annoyance flared in Hale's chest. That's none of your business. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into his room, shutting the door behind him. Emory stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. Was meeting that man again truly just a coincidence? Or was fate playing games with him? Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe for more episodes.